What are the different types of floor structures? So there's kind of three main, and that would be a slab on grade, and that can only be used on the first level because slab has to be on the grade. So that for a second level, you're going to have to use a different floor structure. The next is a joist, which can kind of be in multiple different options. And then a floor truss is what I see people using the most of. Now, a floor truss and a joist, kind of similar. Like all floor trusses are a type of joist, but not all joists are floor trusses. It's one of those kind of chicken egg situations. So if you're doing slab on grade, that's going to be a concrete system. If you're going with a wood, or you can have steel joists, it's just a term that is indicating it's a floor substructure. So in my categories, in my brain, I have the slab on grade, joists, and floor trusses. So I split the trusses and the joists apart from each other, just for me to be able to understand it the best. With my categorization of joists, then there is an I-joist, which is an engineered product, or there is lumber joists. So your traditional 2x12 would be, or a 2x10, just put on its vertical would be a joist within your floor structure. As the engineered ones is what I see the most of, especially on crawl houses and second stories, and that is the I-joist. And it comes in multiple different levels. We could talk about that at another time. But so an I-joist gets its name because it looks like an I, the letter I, cross section of it. So it's engineered and glued and put it all together in order to provide a certain amount of support and structure. It is engineered to be stronger than just a traditional board lumber. When you have a board, it's going to potentially have weak spots where the tree grew a little faster, grew around something, and so it being engineered, it's much more uniform, so it can withstand a little bit more, and then they know exactly where you can cut through in order to run pipes and whatever else you need to get through it. And I most commonly see this 9.5 or 11 7/8 is what people want to use. It's the most economical option, and they do go all the way up to 24 inches. Most people, when they're looking at a 24-inch joist, they just swap over to a floor truss at that point. And I don't know if that's just for habit or what, but that's just what I normally see is once it gets 16 and above, they're using a floor truss, especially because in order to get those spans, generally they want pretty large spans so that they're accommodating for that. And so a floor truss looks similar to like a ceiling truss, except for it's just flat. And it uses triangles because triangles are the strongest. I don't know if you ever played that bridge builder game, but if you want your bridge to stand up, then you gotta make it out of triangles. And it's engineered in order to hold up and withstand. One of the main reasons why people would go a floor truss over a joist that I see really often is needing to get mechanicals from one side to the other. This has a wide air gap that you can just run mechanicals, whereas a joist is solid and you can only cut certain size holes in certain areas, like the bottom third, in order for it still to be engineered to be strong. Whereas the floor trusses, if you have the space, then you can easily run ducting in between there. And it's a quicker installation. It also, generally, you have more space there for more insulation. So if you're wanting it to be quieter between floors, there's more space in order to do that. So I see most people choosing their floor out of either a joist or out of a truss. Both joists and trusses can be metal. That just gets more expensive. So I see people just choose the lumber options. Metal obviously is going to be fire resistant. It can go further spans, and so sometimes, especially with the really modern looking ones, the engineer will call out floor or steel I-beams instead to hold it up. There is also concrete floor systems, so you don't necessarily have to have concrete sitting on the ground. I mean, a parking garage is a perfect example. You are seeing that the entire parking garage is concrete and you're driving on it, but it's not down on the ground. That's a lot of rebar. The engineers have to figure all that math out. And so for the traditional home, sub 3,000 square feet, and not with any crazy spans, is probably just going to be utilizing one of these more efficient options. It's a lot easier to get floor trusses and than it would be for your steel I-beams, and you don't have to weld and bolt and do all that kind of stuff. And so framers have much more experience with it. And if you go with floor trusses, you would just buy that directly from the same truss manufacturer that's doing your roof, and they're just going to engineer it for a floor instead and tell you how wide the spacing has to be and how tall it needs to be, if the roof needs to raise in order to accommodate for a larger depth. But most times, especially on just a single level house, people they normally choose the joist option, because in a single level, if it's got a crawl space, you're not needing to run mechanicals through the floor system like you would be between the first and second floor. If you're between the first and second floor, you have larger spans that you're wanting to cover. You want to be able to get those mechanicals through there. And so that's where I see it a lot more. But if it's a single level house, it's normally shown as joists, just normal wooden joists. And that's because they have the space underneath in the crawl in order to get mechanicals. They don't have to cut through a bunch of holes. They don't want extra sound barrier between your crawl and your house, unless you have groundhogs that are throwing a party. They're not really going to bother you. And it tends to be a cheaper option, and you can put pony walls throughout the foundation to support it, and it doesn't have to go as far of a span. So that's what I normally see people speccing out. And so I normally, especially on single level homes, I just assume that they're going to want a floor joists. And then the next step, unless they tell me otherwise, or they have something cool that they want, like they want to be able to drive on, have a theater underneath their garage or something. I have seen that. And so that takes other considerations and looping the engineer a lot quicker. So instead of more towards the end, you loop in the engineer towards the beginning. So I see on decks, they'll use joists of the lumber. They'll use pressure treat lumber, but it doesn't have as large of a span. And so people don't want to have to put as many pony walls, whereas a deck, those spans normally fit within those parameters. So I will see dimensional lumber, specifically pressure treat, used on decks. This is not pressure treat unless it just looks like normal lumber. Pressure treat, you can tell it will, especially at least in the Northwest, what I've seen is it's kind of like a reddish orange look, and then it's got little indentations all along that make it look like it was stapled. And so in person, it'll look like that. It's kind of an odd odd thing, but that is treated so that it can hold up to the elements. So that's why I normally see them use pressure treat on decks, because it is going to be exposed to water and other elements that you don't want your wood to rot out or age prematurely. So if it's going to be exposed, it's generally pressure treat. But yeah, and that is a joist. And if you play Wordle, it was the word of the day about 3 years ago. I got it in 3 guesses. So let me know if you have any questions.